And while there's been plenty of Prince Harry news this week, mostly about his relationship with the royal family, the Prince himself was off to Africa on his own to follow in Princess Diana's footsteps and walk Angola's largest minefield. Now, Harry is always at his best doing this sort of advocacy, and the Halo Trust is an organisation he has long been involved with. The advocacy itself, totally on brand for Harry and in a very good way. The timing, I have to say, is a little curious. Joining me now is writer and broadcaster Esther Krakue. Esther, what's your view on how Harry's trip to Angola went down?
So Harry's trip to Angola is clearly part PR, part personal mission. So I do think the timing is quite curious. We have to remember that he was made a patron of the Halo Trust back in 2019, and the hope was that having him on the board of trustees would improve the reputation and the profile of the charity, but more importantly, actually increase donations by the Angolan government, which Harry himself admitted was the motivation behind this recent trip. Now, what happened a year after 2019, 2020, when they exited the royal family in spectacular fashion? And the reason why this is relevant is because the whole debacle with the Sentebale charity, you remember that Sophie and Chandoka, who was talking about actually the impact of Megxit on the charity and the fact that they lost loads of patrons and loads of donations, and the timing was directly correlated to Megxit, which I'm sure they don't appreciate that term, but for lack of a better word, you can actually see that there is a potential for that to have been the case with Halo Trust as well. After Prince Harry left the royal family with his wife in the way that they did, we don't know the books, but it is likely that his profile had contributed as well to the decline in donations, or lack thereof, or lack of a positive profile. So it's quite curious why he's chosen now. I mean, you have to remember one of the allegations that the former CEO, or the acting CEO, he's trying to make the former CEO, Sophie, alleged against him, was the fact that he hadn't actually been to the continent of Africa in 5 years. And the only time he did return was at her invitation to come and say, hey, come and look at the good work that your charity is doing. So he kind of really had a hands-off approach, which many thought, actually, he's only doing these sorts of things to kind of boost his image, but he's not really a hands-on person when it comes to his charities. Now, of course, this is not his actual charity. He was just made a patron and put on the board of trustees. But again, the timing looks suspicious. The same time that he's trying to have reconciliation talks with his family, he's now going to Angola to do this. Obviously, he is aware that his public profile needs to have a bit of some spit shining done, should I say. And actually, he chose to go on this trip solo and said that he didn't want Meghan to come because it would be too dangerous. Of course, we understand that taking your wife to potentially walk down a former landmine is dangerous, although it was likely very safe. They wouldn't let the prince go until they knew it was safe. But again, he took it to Nigeria, he took it to Colombia. So again, many people are not really buying that this is where he draws the line, but apparently England is too dangerous for his wife. So this is definitely, no matter how you try and spin it, definitely partly a PR exercise. And I think that the prince is using this as an opportunity to have some more positive headlines in the news regarding himself.
I think that's a very astute observation, Esther. Now, President Trump, we know he's visiting the UK in September for a historic second state visit. An update this week. What's going on?
Yes, so Donald Trump is going to be visiting the UK on a state visit, and now we can reveal that the date is between September 17th and September 19th. Parliament is in recess during that time, and there was speculation that they've chosen these dates so that he doesn't have to actually speak in Parliament in Westminster, and then the potential for a whole debacle of MPs storming out or people heckling him doesn't actually happen, which would be a complete diplomatic disaster and something that President Trump will not take lightly. Now, we already know that he's made history. He's the first and only US president to date to be awarded 2 state visits. We know that historically, second-term American presidents are not awarded a second state visit, but actually just tea and lunch with the monarch. And we saw Keir Starmer presenting him with this second invitation back in February, which was seen as kind of a diplomatic stroke of genius. And now Donald Trump was actually supposed to see the King Charles in Scotland when he's up there over the next few days, between, I believe, July 25th and July 29th, to stay at his golf courses and to view them. But apparently, because of the nature of this massive state visit, which will be conducted by the King and Queen in Windsor Castle, they don't think it's necessary to also then have him meet the King and Queen when he's in Scotland. We do know that Keir Starmer will be having an informal meeting with President Trump King Trump. I'm sure he'd love that. With President Trump while he's up there, but the King and Queen will only meet him when he's in September for his formal state visit.
Now, on to the family reconciliation, and there's plenty of it in the news at the moment. But commentator Carol Malone had this to say regards Prince Harry.
I think they have to reset relations from this point onwards. I think what will definitely happen, in fact, is that they will lay some ground rules for communication from now on. And Harry cannot repeat what goes on in these private conversations because Harry really wants reconciliation and he wants to be able to freely speak with his father. At the moment, he can't even get hold of his father. There is zero contact. He can't get through to him on the phone. He has to go through aides. So I think he'd be willing to meet those demands. And it's a pretty simple demand. It's, if I chat to you, can you please not, have it leak out on Oprah Winfrey,
Is she close to the mark in your view, or is there a bit more to it?
I think certainly from the King's side, that's certainly stipulations that would be not only reasonable, but to be expected. The question is whether they will actually follow through. What has changed? What's so different now? I know Prince Harry has been very adamant about the fact that he wants to reconcile with his family, but who does he go to make this known? The BBC. So even though the royal family are saying, well, obviously this is mainly a privacy issue, there has been no indication that this is what the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will actually do. And even if they choose to try and keep things private, we know that the whole ecosystem and infrastructure around them means that it will likely leak. So even if they don't intend for any private conversations to leak, do they have the kind of encoded security apparatus and infrastructure to prevent phone tapping, for example, which we know that Prince Harry has received settlements for? Or will they say things to their friends in Montecito that could eventually be leaked into the media in one form or another? So while I do think this is an olive branch, I actually don't think anything will come of it. I think Prince William in particular will say, I don't trust this person. They might have some sort of dummy calls to see if anything comes from that. I really don't think this is going to go as far as people think, because ultimately I think the King knows that his role as monarch is probably more consequential than having conversations with Harry, who's really made his own bed and is kind of seeing the consequences of all the things that he's done. So I personally am quite skeptical of this. I don't think it will go very far. I think William in his capacity will try and veto it, especially after the horrible year that him and his father and his wife have had, just in terms of their health, but also in terms of dealing with the fallout from all the scandalous accusations and allegations made by the Sussexes.
And a bit more scandal, maybe. Princess Catherine's longtime personal assistant, Natasha Archer, well, she's finished up at the palace. Nothing scandalous about that. She's apparently unfollowed Meghan and her brand As Ever on Instagram. I guess she doesn't need that in her life anymore, Esther.
I think so as well. I think she's having a bit of a detox. And to be perfectly honest, I think mainly the only reason why she followed those brands was just research. She's working with she was working with Princess Catherine. It's important to know the environment that you're working within. I was going to say know your enemy, but I don't think they would phrase Meghan as so much of an enemy. But it's important to know these things. And I think that's basically the only reason why she did it. It was for professional reasons, to kind of keep up with what's going on, to see if there's going to be any overlap. A lot of people don't understand the amount of strategizing and work that actually goes into not only curating a public image, but making sure that all the noise doesn't seep through. Because at the end of the day, they're professional, basically ambassadors. They represent charities and the UK. As uncomfortable as it is, they have to make sure that they have their ear on the ground and know that any kind of potential disruptions to what they're doing and anything that can negatively affect all the charities and work that they do is scoped out and limited. Absolutely.